What's up, YouTube? It's JDM Tech with another interesting garage video for you. So I had a problem. I don't have the proper equipment to be cutting gaskets. And as you can see, this is a pretty specialized little piece here that I had to cut a nice gasket for. And there's some really thin areas, man, really thin, where this gasket has to go and it has to seal. So it's got to be a good gasket. Unfortunately, the people who make this piece of equipment, I'll show you what it is right now. It's this 2-speed electromagnetic fan clutch. It goes to a tour bus, sort of irrelevant for the purpose of the video, but I want to show you guys why it's really important to select the right type of gasket material for your application. This is going to have gear oil in it. You consider this like a differential. Really, it's just a 90-degree angle gearbox. And that piece I was just showing you, when it goes in here, it's going to set the pinion depth, this one, on this shaft here. You see the spline there? And actually, no, that's the input side. It's the output side, which is this one. Yeah, the keyed one goes here on the shaft, okay, on the inside. And what's going to happen is how far in that piece is allowed to move is going to have an effect on the pinion depth. And you don't want to set it too tight and then have an issue with clearance. All right, so it's set from the factory. I want to make sure that I set it back up the same way it was. It had good backlash beforehand, which is why it's important to test things a little bit before you take them apart. I've been rebuilding these clutches for a while. I got another one laying over there to be done. People know that I do these now, so I'm getting quite a bit of calls on those. But yeah, so how I cut this gasket. I saw there's a couple of guys that have videos on there about this thing called a cry cut that chicks use for crafty stuff. And you can take a measurement and, you know, upload it into Photoshop and then mask the areas that you want the gasket to be in and upload it into the little software. And it seems easy enough to do, and the thing will cut your gasket for you. But if you're like me and it's, Sunday night and you got to get this thing done for Monday type of thing, and you need to get this gasket cut and you need it to work and you need it to fit right, I want to try to give you guys some tips on how I was able to do this. All right, now it's not 100% perfect because it is hand cut, but I mean, you can see like my holes line up pretty good. Everything's going to work with this gasket pretty nicely. So the way I did it, first of all, selected the right gasket material. This is the part number for this gasket material. It's for sealing oil, coolant, and gasoline. I got this at O'Reilly Auto Parts. This is what it says on the backs by Felpro. The reason I say selecting the right gasket material is obviously for your application. Some of you probably are like, get to the point. I don't need to know that. I already got my gasket material. But the thickness, like I said, for setting that pinion depth right, that's about how thick, just slightly thinner than that the original gasket was. But when I compress this down in there, it might get a little bit thinner. I mean, we can compress it with this and you can see it gets right about, that's about how thick the original one was. So, all right, so that's pretty close compared to what I already had on the shelf was this rubberized stuff. All right, and this stuff, look at the thickness difference. You think that would make a difference in my clearance? Absolutely. All right, so selecting the correct gasket material, all right, not just for its sealing capabilities, but also for its thickness, all right. That stuff was also purchased at O'Reilly's a while back. I don't do this very often, so I just want to show some guys like with some basic tools that you can achieve, making a proper gasket like that. You can also use a cereal box too, believe it or not. But I've seen a couple videos where guys will take the gasket material and they will use a hammer. And if you got a sharp edge here, which we really don't, this is kind of a rounded edge, they like tap on it all the way around and that will help give you the outline, okay? I did do that, but the way I did it, especially since this is aluminum, I don't want to mar it all up. I just kind of folded it down by hand first, all around. All right, but obviously I had to cut the hole in the middle. So what I did was I just kept going around the garage and looking for something. I even tried this. That was a similar size to this. All right, and you want a nice circle. So I put that piece, which actually came from the same unit I'm rebuilding. It was this one, because it's got a nice sharp edge to it that you can trace around real nice with a pencil. See, so I put that on, I cut the piece of paper larger than it needed to be, okay, off the roll. And then when you put this on here, then I took the pencil and I made myself a nice line to go by. Now, being that this was larger, just slightly larger than the hole, I then took my marker. So you see I've used my pencil so far. I then took my marker and I drew a line on the inside of that line. So that way, you gotta be kind of precise with this, but you can do it. I'm looking through the phone to do it, obviously not being that precise, but you could see I could take off, that looks like a good maybe 1/8 an inch, okay, off of the inside of that line and keep my line if I'm pretty precise about the way I draw it. All right, or if you're fancy and you have one of those nice little compasses with the sharp thing in the middle and you can, all right, good for you. Do it that way, Poindexter. But this works, okay? So, got my circle. Once I got my circle, I used my X-Acto knife. You can buy these, they come with extra blades. They're really sharp, they will split you to the bone, be careful. But you know, they clamp the blade down in the middle right there. Pretty good tool. All right, so get yourself an X-Acto knife if you don't have one. A razor knife will work too. Just you got to use just the very tip of it so you can get the radius of your cut nice. Obviously scissors once you get your shape. So I got the circle and then I placed it over this and then I folded it down over the edges and I tapped on it lightly and it gave me the line of the outer shape, okay? Now, I didn't just go cut right along that line right away. I cut it down a little bit smaller than the original paper, but I wasn't sure how I was going to get my holes yet. So I've drilled it before using a drill bit for that rubberized stuff, but this stuff's pretty thick. So you can get away with drilling through this stuff. This thin stuff, it'll rip. So especially in these real thin areas. So once I got my line and I got it cut down kind of close, then I went ahead and I used another technique. I used the screws, okay? Once I had it placed on here, I just used a marker and I put a bunch of marker on the tip of the screw and I pushed the screw through, okay? And then I held the paper down with one hand, all right, around the screw hole like so. And then I pushed the screw up through the hole and then just rubbed it on the paper and it gave me perfect markings of where the screw holes needed to be. All right, so then what I did was I used some tape to help me hold it down too, actually. So we've used the scissors, we've used the pencil, the marker, the X-Acto knife, the tape, the screws, and then the Allen. Really, I used that just to have some more control over the screw and turn it against the paper to give me my markings. But to cut the holes, if you have a hole puncher and your bolt is similar in size and you have room, which I didn't really have room to play with, so I wanted to go smaller. So what I elected to do was use this other set of tools. All right, it's kind of ghetto from this point on, guys. So I know I'm going to get blasted in the comments for this, but I took this roll pin, all right, and I put the gasket paper. I cleaned the table and I put this gasket paper there and I put the roll pin down. And I'll show you guys a little demonstration here, okay? Just put the roll pin. We'll have to do it on the bigger piece. It's kind of a waste, but all right. So I put the roll pin there and then I smashed it, all right? Turn your volume down. 3, 2, 1. Okay? So now when I hit it like that, look at that. Punches me a nice little hole, all right? You got to be careful because with the roll pin, you got that little gap. So sometimes you got to like turn it a little bit. You got to take it up and turn it a little bit and then do it again and you'll get a nice clean hole there, all right? Once I got that nice clean hole, then I used this little doohickey here, a little abrasive cone, and I put the hole over a hole in the bench, that one right there, in the gasket paper, and I just ran the drill and I used that to open up the hole. All right, I don't have it hooked up to the drill. I'm working with one hand here, so forgive me, all right? But you see how that opened up the hole a little bit? And then I just kept checking with the bolts. I just kept opening up the hole a little bit more until the bolts would fit right in there. All right, and it's pretty close as it is right there. You could push it through, but with it being as tight as it was, you know, in a couple areas right here, I didn't want to do that. So I just kept opening it up from both sides with the drill. And then I was able to fit the screw through. Another thing that I did was, because of punching a hole like that, you get a little rough spot on the gasket paper. So I just ran it along the file, just lightly, just pushing very lightly with my thumb right where the hole was, and it's got a little burr in the paper, and then that makes it nice and smooth again. So it's nice. And it worked. I mean, it's not exactly 100% perfect, but it works. If you're in a jam and you really need a gasket that's pretty precise, you can make it happen like this. And you could use a little thin layer of gasket sealer if you want, and that'll get you sealed up. All right, hopefully that helps you guys. Consider liking, subscribing, bashing me in the comments, whatever you want to do. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.